Hey everyone, this is Mr. Delphin, and today we're going to talk about dividing whole numbers by fractions using a model. So let's make sure we have these notes in front of you so that we can begin our lesson. The learning objective for today says, I can divide whole numbers and fractions using a model.
Okay, let's look at vocabulary. Fraction is part of a whole. Dividend is a total amount. It's a number that goes in. Divisor is the amount going into the dividend. It would be the number that goes out. Key concepts. To divide whole numbers and fractions using a model, create a model using the denominators of both numbers. Remember to highlight the amount for the dividend and highlight the amount for the divisor. See how many times the divisor goes into the dividend.
So let's take a look at example number 1. It says find 2 divided by 1/3. The 2 would be my in, or my dividend, and the 1/3 will be my out, which is my divisor. And anytime you do any division problem, ask yourself, how many times does 1/3 go into 2? How many times does 1/3, which is my divisor, go into 2, which is my dividend? So to start this process, I'm going to rewrite this problem as 2. And anytime you have a whole number, let's make 2 look like a fraction by placing a 1 right below it, divided by 1/3. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to take a look at my denominators, because that's how I'm going to start designing my model. I've got a 1 in the first fraction, and I've got a 3 in the second fraction. So using those two numbers, I'm going to create a box that is 1 by 3 boxes long. So here's my 1 box by 3 boxes long. So that is one whole group. But if you look at my dividend says it needs to be 2. So what I need to do is I need to double that. Another 1 by 3 box. And I'm going to go ahead and shade the entire box for my dividend because that's the total amount that I have. The problem says that my dividend was 2, so I'm going to go ahead and shade the entire model. So just take your highlighter and shade the entire box. Now what I want to do is I want to create a model for my 1/3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the same 1 by 3 model. Once again, the number 1 by 3 came from my denominators. And I'm going to change my highlighter and highlight in there. So this is going to be worth 1/3. Now 1/3 is less than 1, so I'm not going to color the entire box. I'm only going to color 1 out of the 3 boxes. Okay? So now I'm going to ask myself, how many of these 1 squares can fit into my dividend? So let's go ahead and count. I can fit 1 square here. I could fit another one. And here's 3. Now if you look at it, I can fit 4, 5, 6. So my quotient is equal to 6. So let's go back and answer that question. How many times does 1/3 go into 2? Well, it goes in 6 times. So whenever you create these models, it makes it a lot easier to use the grid so that it makes your models look nice and clean. So here's example 2. It says find 7 divided by 2/3. So just like the last problem, let's go ahead and label our in. and our out. Our 7 is our dividend, and our 2/3 is our divisor. And I'm going to ask myself, how many times does 2/3 go into 7? So 2/3 go into 7. Okay? So let's start this process again by rewriting 7. And I want to make 7, which is a whole number, into a fraction. So I'm going to place a 1 right below it, divided by 2/3. Now let's take a look at the denominators. My first denominator says I have a 1. And my second denominator says that I have a 3. So what I want to do is I want to create a box that is a 1 by 3 model, just like that. Okay? So now let's go ahead and talk about the actual division problem. If I have a 1 by 3 model, this right here represents 1 whole. But my dividend says I need 7 of them. So if I have 1 right here, I'm going to go ahead and draw myself another one. So there's 2 whole boxes. And then here's 3 whole boxes, 4 whole boxes, 5 whole boxes, 6 whole boxes, 7 whole boxes. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and shade inside or highlight inside of all 7 boxes, because that's the total amount that I have. So let's go ahead and shade all 7 boxes that we've created, because that is our dividend. So it's going to take a little bit of time to sit here and color. And remember, we want to make sure we try to color inside the lines. I'm not doing a very good job of that right now, but for the most part, I think we get the point. Alright, one more box. Alright, so this model right here represents my dividend. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write another model, which is a 1 by 3 box right next to it. But this is going to represent my 2/3 fraction. So I'm going to take a different color, highlighter, and 2/3 is less than 1. So I don't want to shade all 3 boxes. What I want to do is I want to shade only 2 of these boxes. Okay, because it's not 1 whole, it's 2/3. So now if I look at my divisor, I have 2 squares here. I want to see how many times these 2 squares go into my dividend. So let's go ahead and look for 2 squares. I see 2 squares right here. I see another 2 squares here, and another 2 squares here. And then if I look at the rest of my model, here's 2 more. Here's another 2. And here's another 2. Here's another 2 squares, another 2 squares, and another 2 squares that can go inside of it. And if I look at it, another 2 squares can go inside of my dividend. And I have 1 right here that is left over. 1 left over. So let's go ahead and count how many groups I was able to make. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I was able to make 10 whole groups. But if you look at it, I still have 1 left over. So that becomes my numerator. Now if I ask myself, how many make an entire group? Well, 2 made an entire group. So 2 would be my denominator. So I'm going to ask myself again, how many times does 2/3 go into 7? Well, it goes in 10.5 times. So once again, whenever you draw these models, please use the good grid paper, because it's going to help you to create nice, clean models. So now let's go ahead and pause the video, complete these guided problems, and then play it back for some feedback. Now be sure to show a model to solve the following problems. Alright, so example 3 says find 4/5 divided by 4. Let's go ahead and label our dividend, which is our 4/5, that's our in, and our divisor, which is 4, that is our out. And I'm going to ask myself, how many times does 4 go into 4/5? So how many times does 4 go into 4/5? That's the key question that you want to ask yourself. So let's go ahead and create our rewrite our fraction. So I have 4/5, which is already a fraction, divided by 4, but I can make 4, which is a whole number, into a fraction by placing a 1 right below it. Now I want to take a look at my denominators. My first denominator says I have a 5, and my second denominator says I have a 1. So what I want to do is I want to create a 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 1 model. And this is going to represent 1 whole. Okay? So using that, I'm going to go ahead and just recreate that model, which is our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 1 model. And that's going to represent our dividend, which is 4/5. So I'm going to take a highlighter, and I'm going to go ahead and color it. But I'm not going to color the entire thing because I want only 4/5. So that's what the dividend tells me, is I only get 4/5 of it. So I'm going to color just 4 out of the 5. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and create the divisor. So the divisor, I'm going to recreate that box. This 5 by 1 model only represents 1 whole. But the divisor says I need 4 of them. So there's 1. Here's my second model. Here's my third whole model. And here's my fourth whole model. And this represents 4. And what I can do now is I can go ahead and shade the entire thing because that's the entire divisor. So once again, try to color inside of the lines. So that's only 2. Let's color the third one right here. And let's color the fourth one right here. I'm going to color the entire 4 boxes because that's the amount that my divisor says. Okay? So now I want to ask myself, how many of this group right here can go into my 4/5? Now if you think about it, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I've got 20 squares in there. 20 squares cannot fit inside of these 4 squares. They can't fit in there. So I know that I'm not going to have a whole group, which means my answer is going to be less than 1. So whenever you have a number that cannot go into your dividend, what you're going to do is your first number, if I've got 4 boxes here, that 4 boxes is going to become my numerator. And then if you take a look at the total amount that makes a group, I've got 20 of these blue squares. Well, the 20 blue squares can't fit into the red squares, so I'm just going to place that on the bottom. So I get 4/20, which is less than 1. But I have to make sure I reduce my fraction. If I look at it, 4 goes into the top and the bottom, so let's divide the top and bottom by 4. So I got 1/5. So let's go ahead and ask ourselves this question. How many times does 4 go into 4/5? Well, it goes in 1/5 times. So let's go ahead and pause the video, complete these guided problems, and then play it back to get some feedback. So now that we've completed the lesson, I want to know how you feel about it. So let's go ahead and self-assess ourselves. If you have any questions, please bring those questions to class tomorrow, then we can discuss it.